My name is Maniza Naqvi, and this is the 18th episode of the Little Book Company podcast. My guest in conversation for this podcast is Hoori Noorani, publisher and, if I may introduce her this way, classical dancer. Hoori Noorani runs the remarkable publishing house Maktaba Danyal, which has published literary works in Urdu, both contemporary and classic, as well as Urdu translations of Russian novels and others. The Little Book Company has uploaded many, about 28 or 30 of her publications as eBooks so far. In fact, Maktaba Danyal was our second publisher to come on board the Little Book Company's platform and trust us to carry their publications as eBooks when we got started more than 3 years ago. For the sake of transparency, she is also my publisher for my novel, The Inn, which is her first publication in English. Welcome, Hoori.
Thank you, Maniza. It's lovely being on the podcast with you.
It's lovely to have you here. And Hoori, I want to talk to you about so much. But first of all, I want to also introduce you as a Russian speaker.
Yes, I am a Russian speaker. I've lived in Russia for, what was then the Soviet Union for 6 years. I was studying over there. I was doing my master's in philology, and that's how I learned the language.
Can you tell me a little bit about the story of how you went to Moscow?
Yes, well, I was always very interested. I was a student of literature. That was my subject. You know, everyone has a subject that is close to their heart. So even in school, my subject was always literature. And I used to read extensively. I came from a family of people who were, surrounded by books. My father was a publisher, and we always had writers in our house, and we had a huge library, and my parents were avid readers, as well as my brothers. So I had read a lot of Russian literature as well. And then I also came from a background of a left-leaning family, of a progressive left-leaning family. So the fascination with the Soviet Union and life over there was also something which was exciting for me. And so I decided to go and pursue my studies in Russian literature. The faculty was the Faculty of Linguistics, Philology, but literature came under the same faculty. So even though my degree is in philology, I did my major in literature, and I did my master's thesis in literature. So that was the sort of background of going to Moscow to study.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And what was it like being in Moscow? What would be the...
Yeah, so this was the year when I went, it was the year 1977. Mm-hmm. And I was there till 1983. It was a fascinating place. Education was absolutely free. In fact, we would get a stipend of 90 rubles, which was a lot of money to, be able to survive, to be able to eat and entertain ourselves and buy books and, watch cinema and whatever. And so education was free, the hostel was free. And at that time, I think foreigners were pampered a lot, especially, this university that I went to, the Patras Lumumba People's Friendship University, was created especially for students coming from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Of course, the students from all over the Soviet Union also studied in that university. So we were really well looked after, really pampered. Everything was fascinating. The way they taught the language, how scientifically it was taught, how we were, from day one, our teacher would not use, she knew English, but she never used the English language with us. So the first year, which was called the preparatory year, was just to learn the language. So we were divided into groups of 6, 7, according to, I had Asians in my group, I had Indians, and I had a Nepali student, and and our teacher knew English, but she never spoke English as much as she could, in very rare instances would she use the language. Otherwise, it was all Russian. And they gave, the first year, they would, try to have us share the dorm room also with the Russian students, so that we were constantly in practice with the language. And also at the end of that first year, they discouraged going back home for the holidays, because they said it's too soon for you to go, and being away for 2 months will affect your vocabulary and your, you've just newly learned this. So it was so interesting to see how they taught the language, how we picked it up so quickly. And yeah, it was a wonderful place to be in. I made great friends who I'm still, in touch with and close to. And I really count those as one of, as the best years of my life.
Yes, I can imagine. Most students do count their student years. Most people count their student years as the best years of their life, but it must have been so special in Moscow. How did you deal with the cold?
Eve, I've lost you again, the sound.
Let me see. Can you hear me now?
No.
No? You can't?
I can hear you very faintly.
Okay, well, if you can hear me, you talk. What did you think about, how did you deal with the cold?
Sorry?
The weather, the cold in Moscow.
Oh, the weather. Okay. So they did was take us and buy us the appropriate clothes, the what they call the overcoat, the palto, and the shapka, the warm hat, and gloves and everything. So they equipped us for the cold. And but still, of course, the cold is difficult to deal with. It's never easy.
No.
The dorms were very well heated, as was the university. I didn't actually mind the cold, except for those days which were wet and then icy, and the ground became slippery. Those were terrible. Or when the wind was blowing. But I loved the snowfall, and I didn't really mind the winters all that much.
And were you already trained as a classical dancer at that point?
So I started training at the age of 6. And I used to go. My aunts loved Pakistani movies, and I used to go along with them, and I would come back home and I would immediately start dancing. So my mother said, if you love dancing so much, then you're going to learn it properly. So at that time, the Ganshyam Rhythmic Art Center was located in Karachi. Mr. and Mrs. Ganshyam were students of Uday Shankar, who was a pioneer in using classical Indian dance and fusing it with modern ballet techniques. Ballet as in, not the Western ballet, but ballet as in dance drama. And so they came from that school. Mrs. Ganshyam was from Assam, and Mr. Ganshyam was a Maratha. And so they came for a performance to Pakistan. I think it was in the 50s or early 60s. And Sohrawardy, I think, was at the time the Prime Minister, and he requested that they stay on and they start a school over here.
Which they did.
they started, which they did, and they started this academy.
In Karachi.
And the academy, yes, in Karachi, and the academy had a board of directors, and that board of directors had many prominent personalities on it. They were industrialists, they were people from the world of art and literature, and other people. So it was run by this board, and the classes, of course, were taken by Mr. and Mrs. Ghanshyam. So when my mother took me there, I was 4 years old. And Mr. Ghanshyam said, come back when she's 6, because that's the age we start. So at 6, I started dancing. The children's classes were taken by Mrs. Ghanshyam. So my first few formative years were under her tutelage. And then after a couple of years, then when I was, I think around 10, I was already with Mr. Ghanshyam in his class. So the course was a 6-year course. So by 12, I was already a graduate. And believe it or not, even though their fees was very minimal at that time, but after graduation, all students could continue dancing with them and performing with them, and they didn't charge a single paisa of fees.
Wow.
It was just, when I think back, I think that is so incredible.
Yes.
And yeah, and around that time, so after I graduated, I would sometimes, in my early teens, I would sometimes be asked by Ms. Ghanshyam to take on the younger students, take their classes instead of her, or if she was busy or something. So I had, experience in teaching the young ones. And of course, we did a lot of performances when
Beautiful.
TV started first. We had a lot of TV performances and stage performances. I remember in Bhutto's time, there was a minority conference organized by the government. And that was the first time that Mr. and Mrs. Ghanshyam actually, choreographed dance in the Hindu shloks. And we performed to that. We performed in front of dignitaries. We performed for the Prime Minister, Mr. Bhutto, and his foreign guests in Islamabad, as well as in Karachi. And then there was a women's festival also organized by Nusrat Bhutto and the party's women's wing. And we did performances for that. So there was performances happening, and it was that part of my childhood was really immersed in music. I would go, so classes for dance were thrice a week, and I would be going for dance class from 4 to 5. And then after that, I would stay on from 5 to 6 for the singing class, and 6 to 7 for the sitar class. And of course, I had become so much a part of their family, and their younger daughter, Tara, was my age, became really close to me as a friend. So I was like constantly in and out of that house, till I left for my studies
in Russia.
So
Wow.
that was the part, the dance part of it. But of course, I continued dancing. Even when I was in Moscow, I had performances. I had some students, Russian students, who wanted to learn from me. So I would, once in a while take on a student or two. And when I would come back in the vacations, I would, the first time I came back for my vacations, I went and met the Ghanshyams. By that time, they'd moved houses, because this was, 77. It was already, the Zia period had started, and dance was becoming taboo. There were no performances happening. And also the Ghanshyams were, being Hindus and being dancers, they were ostracized. They used to live in Baudrabad when I was young. And then people started throwing stones into their house. They moved into defense. And then eventually, before I came back, they had already shifted to the United States.
Wow.
So
So the 70s was a period of dancing and music for you.
Sorry, can you repeat? I can't hear you again.
I said the 70s, the decade of
Yes.
70s was a period of dancing and music for you.
Yes. So the 70s, the early 70s. Yes, I was born in 58. So I must have, when I was 6, it must have been the 60s. So I started dancing. Yeah.
And
The late 60s.
when did the music stop in Karachi and in Pakistan? I mean, the Ghanshyam.
So this was all 77 and onwards,
Mm-hmm.
when the Islamization and the Zia regime came to power, and dance was declared taboo, and all performances on TV and stage were stopped.
And when you came back in 83 from Moscow, did you find a very different Pakistan?
Yes, it was a very, very different Pakistan. It was different, but it was the start of something that would become even more alarming as the 80s progressed, because it was the Farhat Hashmi phenomena had still not happened.
Yeah.
So that came a little later on. But it was very different. It was very well. The first few years were a little exciting because I came back and I immediately got very involved with the Dastak Theater Group, which was founded by Aslam Azhar and Mansoor Saeed. And at that same time, right after I came back, there were preparations were ongoing for celebrating the centenary of Karl Marx. So there was a lot happening around that. And then a couple of years later, it was the 25th anniversary of the Progressive Writers Association. Sorry, the 50th anniversary of the Progressive Writers Association. So things were happening around that, and we were doing plays, which which were very. They were very political plays. A lot of them were translations of Brecht. We did the life of Galileo, and of course, everything had to be passed by the censors. Thankfully, the censors didn't have very intelligent people. So what they were looking for was if there were scenes of, any intimate scenes or scenes of with alcohol, drinking or something like that. But the political messages sort of went over their heads. So we were able to do a lot of very interesting plays at that time. And we did not only proscenium theater, but we performed in a lot of Mazdoor bastis, in site area and other places. And a lot of the people in the group came from, they were medical students, there were a lot of Baloch students, there were, it was a very diverse group of people who came together just because of their political consciousness and because of their love for theater. And of course, we all were very enamored by Aslam Azhar and Mansoor and the whole, the whole vision of the group. So at that time, I worked on my first translation, which was a translation of Russian writer's play, Henrik Borovik's play called Interview in Buenos Aires. And it was about the coup in Chile, military coup in Chile. And it seemed so appropriate to do it at that point in Pakistan because, the whole situation was so similar to what had happened in Chile.
Oh, yes.
And yes, so these plays were so well received, and they were part of the whole political process. And the at that time the MRD movement was at its peak, the movement for restoration of democracy. So all this tied up with that. So there was a lot happening in that particular period. up until
1984.
yes, 90 till till that, till the time that Ziaul Haq um, was killed in the crash, and there were elections, and Benazir came into power, and there was a lot of euphoria at that happening. But at the same time, things were changing around the world,
Yeah.
and in Pakistan. I mean, once you're out of that period of struggle, there is a sort of a lull. You sort of, Aslam Azhar was asked by Benazir to take up the reins of PTV again, so he moved to Islamabad. That was one reason for Dastak sort of, becoming a little inactive. And then things started changing around the world, this breakup of the Soviet Union, and all that was happening.
And also the politics of Karachi probably became such that it was becoming harder and harder, right?
Yes. So after that, of course, the politics of Karachi became a really violent city, and life became quite difficult over here. And the political movements also sort of started. The left political movement. There was a lot of breakup in the left political movement, and so that happened around the late 80s and early 90s. Of course, part of it was because of the breakup of the Soviet Union.
And when did you start Maktab Danyal? You said your father was a publisher. That was the Pakistan Law.
Right. So my father had two companies. His first company was Pakistan Law House, which was selling law books, and his passion was always Urdu literature. So in 1967, actually before that, he started another company called Pakistan Publishing House, and that's the company that actually that's the name of my company. Maktab Danyal was the imprint under which he started publishing Urdu books, but that in time became so popular that people know my company by that name, and don't, sort of everyone has forgotten that it's Pakistan Publishing House. So he first formed Pakistan Publishing House, and Pakistan Publishing House was basically acting as the representative of certain UK publishers like Cambridge University Press and Associated Book Publishers, Sotheby's. There was a medical publisher also that they were representing. And then with the money that he would earn in commissions for sales for these publishers, he decided to start publishing Urdu books because he wanted to keep the books very low priced. And also he, of course, he wanted to publish a certain kind of literature. It had to be progressive literature. It had to be, it was very important कि जो भी हम छापें वो रोशन ख्याली फैलाए माशरे में. तो कीपिंग ये सब दिमाग में रख के उर्दू किताबें शाये करना शुरू की मेरे वालिद ने. And the first book he published in Urdu in 1967 was Ujra Diyar by Shahid Ahmad Dehelvi. So,
ये उनकी पहली किताब थी जो उन्होंने पब्लिश की.
जी Ujra Diyar पहली किताब थी. So, and then of course later on all the Sipte Hasan books, we were the first publishers of Sipte Hasan first, and to this day we publish all his books. And we started publishing his books when nobody else would have published those books. And then Mushtaq Ahmad Yusfi came on board. And by the time my father passed away in 1986, he had a wonderful list of authors. Now, when I came back in 1983, for a while I worked in the Russian cultural center teaching Russian language.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I was trying to get the hang of uh, my father's publishing business because it had always been my desire to work with him and publishing Urdu books.
Mhm.
I also, I did my schooling from Karachi Grammar School, but I was only one of two students who took Urdu A for O levels and got a gold medal for it. And so the love for Urdu literature had always been there.
Mhm.
So when I started, I had just started working with my father. I already had a year-old baby, and it was quite a hectic time for me also.
Mhm.
But around that time, my father fell critically ill with cancer, and he died soon after. So when I was very new to the business, and I actually learned not so much from him as I did from reading his files and his letters to authors, and learning from them how he how he dealt with authors and what kind of books I knew what kind of books he was publishing, of course.
Mhm.
And also there was a lot of goodwill because of my father. There
Mhm.
was a lot of goodwill towards me also.
Mhm.
um, a lot of people, like a lot of my authors, actually, Yusfi Saab really mentored me not only with love, but with a lot of, what would one call it, hard love also. I mean, he was very quick to scold me also if he thought, that I hadn't properly proofread something, or, he was very, very strict about things being immaculately proofread. And that's why to this day, even if I give my manuscript to a proofreader, I always do the last checking. And
Mhm.
uh, so, yes, so I
Speak more.
very quickly sort of came into the business and lost my father at the same time. And when my father, I must mention, Maniza, that when my father was ill and then that he was sort of bedridden for more than a year, all the agencies that he had that was subsidizing his Urdu publishing, all of them, sort of took their business to other representatives. Obviously, they were worried that, who would
Yeah.
carry out their work. So he'd lost those agencies, and a little before he died, he said to me that, you will have to close down Maktaba Danyal.
Hmm.
And that was such a hurtful thought for me.
Mhm.
I just took, it was pure stubbornness on my part because uh, without the subsidies to turn this business into a profit making business, frankly, I'm still struggling. But I have persevered, and I have run this business longer now than my father did. So it's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears,
Yes. And
but a lot of happiness also.
a lot of happiness. And isn't publishing and writing always a struggle, Puri?
Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. Especially in our country, where book runs are very low and the cost of publishing becomes very high. And of course, nothing is very professionally done. All over the world, publishers publish books, and then there are distributors and there are booksellers who take the book and who promote the book. Here, the publisher has to be everything. The publisher has to be the person who's judging a manuscript, the person who's editing, who's proofreading, who's promoting the book, who's financing the book, and then also marketing the book. So it's a very tough job, and there's no help, any kind of government help. Raw material is extremely expensive. Paper, of course, you know that, Maniza, paper is terribly, terribly expensive. And with the fluctuation of the dollar and rupee parity, it keeps going up and it never goes down. Even if the rupee gains, it never goes down. So it's very difficult. to survive in these circumstances.
Yeah.
And then something like COVID happens, and
Yeah.
that's an added sort of blow. And of course, writers also don't earn from
yes.
what they're writing. The royalties are hardly anything.
Yes. But and yet, you have, you still keep on keeping on in this struggle, and writers keep on writing. Hoori, we're going to take a little pause here, and when we come back,
Okay.
continue this conversation. Okay.
Right.
So, Hoori, we were talking about writing and publishing as a struggle. Do you think that progressive writing and publishing progressive writing is even a bigger struggle?
Not anymore, I think. I think there's quite a large readership. I mean, the Siktasam books are my bestsellers. So, as well as, books that I'm not publishing, but others are publishing, like Dr. Mubarak Ali's books and others. There's a huge readership now for those kind of books. And I think it's just as much of a struggle for all kinds of books. And I think there are two kinds of struggles. One is the financial struggle, and of course, connected to that is the struggle to market the books. I mean, recently we've seen that a lot of bookshops have closed down, after COVID, or are not doing very well. So most sales are now shifting to online bookshops and online sales, which is also exciting and also very, I think that's quite positive in a way, because it's we are now directly in touch with the reader, and it's direct from publisher to reader. We can give them better discounts. And also I feel that a lot of bookshops are like one of the bookshops in Karachi who mainly deal in English books. Right now, they are the biggest buyers of our books. But you will not find our books in their bookstores. So apparently, they're selling them online. It's very interesting that they're selling our books online in such big quantities, but they don't have space in their bookshops to, carry our books because they're mainly selling English literature.
Well, may I warrant a guess on that?
Yes,
I think that I'll hazard a guess on that rather, that because of the bricks and mortar store that they run, this largest bookseller in Karachi, that is located in a area which probably tends towards English books, right? So,
but Maniza, that's partially true, but they have multiple shops in Karachi. They have shops in areas, which are not just in the posh areas. And, well, yeah, partially maybe. Maybe, yes.
Because I wasn't speaking so much about posh areas, but rather where more people speak
English-speaking people are, yes. I understand, yes. But also, apart from the online sales, the other exciting thing that is happening is the book exhibitions and book conferences and book festivals are increasing every year, not just in one city, but all over Pakistan. And that is providing a really wonderful platform for book sales. So from November onwards till the end of March, we stay so busy, and we sort of, earn more in that period than we do in the rest of the year. So that is another exciting thing that is happening, that instead of one big book exhibition that used to take place every year, we now have these multiple opportunities to showcase our books.
That's wonderful. And when did this start?
So this started This started actually with the Karachi Literature Festival that was organized by Oxford University Press.
Yeah.
And the idea caught on. And now there are multiple festivals happening, not just in, I mean, even in Karachi, there's a Lyari Literature Festival that happens at times. There are smaller, there's a book club running at the Arts Council, which is also, sometimes they will allow one to promote our books on it. And then there's, for some years, the Arts Council has a wonderful Urdu conference that runs for 3-4 days. And they are wonderful. They provide us space free of cost. To, the rest are all paid, but this one is free of cost. So that's really very heartening. Then there's the Literature Festival, there's the Islamabad Literature Festival, there's the festival in Multan, in Faisalabad, in Hyderabad, in Goa. It's just amazing, and it was very different from the rest of the festivals. So it is also making the festivals that started all this, it's making them also think, making them realize that they also have to now think out of the box, otherwise they're losing their audience. So yes, there's a lot of positive, there are a lot of positive things also happening. And it's not just doom and gloom, but we definitely need state patronage. If the book culture has to take flight in this country. We don't have a dearth of readers, as we can see when we have the big expo book fair. Thousands of people come to that.
And are the book fairs through state patronage?
For maybe a couple of book fairs, maybe if there's a book fair organized by the Academy of Letters or someone like that, but none of the book fairs are under state patronage. The other thing is libraries. We really need more libraries, and we need libraries to be more proactive. And for that, libraries also, of course, need funding. So that's another sort of, sore point that there need to be more libraries.
Yeah. You mentioned a festival, you said, that was different from the other literature festivals. I missed that. Which one was that?
So that happened in Peshawar, and unfortunately I wasn't able to attend it, but I've heard really interesting things about it, and how the sessions that they organized were very different, and it was like it was stretched over, I think, almost 2 weeks or some 10 days or something like that. Yeah, it was lengthy, and I'm not sure. I'm forgetting now where it was held, whether it was held at the university or somewhere. But I will surely look it up and give you more details later on.
I think it's a great idea to stretch these festivals over a longer period of time. I think.
Well, two things can be done. They can either be stretched, and they can, they can concentrate on not having so many sessions in a day, or concentrating on a certain topic, or they can be shorter festivals, a one-day festival that can happen multiple times over the year, instead of happening just once a year.
Great idea.
Yes, so there's so many things that can be done.
So, Hoori, in the last couple of years, can you mention to us some of your really best-selling authors and your experience with them?
So, of course, I have that wonderful list of authors that my father developed, and they are, of course, my two best-selling authors, Mushtaq Ahmed Yusfi and Satya Hassan. And then Iftikhar Arif Sahab also, of course, first started when my father was still running the business. And he has also been like a mentor to me all these years. And then I had a wonderful other list of authors. I had Habib Jaleb, I had Femi Daryas, I had many Indian writers, Kuratullain Haider, Gulzar Saab, Javed Akhtar, Jilani Bano.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of work in translations, so not just translations from writers of other languages, but also translations of Pakistani writers writing in English. So
Mm-hmm.
we did two very exciting books. One was Mohammad Hanif's The Case of the Exploding Mangoes,
Mm-hmm.
his best-selling novel, which when we published was also a bestseller until, unfortunately, it got confiscated. Uh, but the other book that we've recently done is Omar Shahid Hamid's The Prisoner,
Yeah.
in translation, Kedi,
Mm-hmm.
which is also doing quite well.
Wonderful.
Recently, very recently, like just I think in February, we published the translation by Naman al-Haq Saab of Kitab al-Tawasin of Mansoor Hallaj.
Mm-hmm.
And that book has really sold very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's so far it's of all my new books, it's been a bestseller.
Mm-hmm. And
So we've done some very exciting authors recently.
mm-hmm.
A few years back, we did Kashif Raza's novel, Char Darvesh Aur Ek Kachwa, which also proved to be a bestseller. We've done two editions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we are in the process of editing the translation of a Korean writer, Han Kang's novel, The Vegetarian, which won the Man Booker Prize in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating novel, and it's been translated by a lady called Asma Hussain, who is residing in Denmark right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's her first translation of a novel. So I've been working on the editing of that, and that should hopefully be out by July. So,
Wonderful.
so there are a lot of interesting things. We published Noor Zahir's short stories. Noor Zahir, Sajjad Zahir's daughter,
Yes.
an Indian writer,
Mm-hmm.
and
And as
we
for
published.
the book, the Urdu translation of Muhammad Hanif's book, The Case of
Yes,
Exploding Mangoes, the what was the translation? The Urdu title for that?
the Urdu title was Phatte Aamo Ka Case.
Hatte Aamo Ka Case. तो वो so it was confiscated, but did you ever get down to, did that case ever get resolved as to what happened?
No, it didn't get resolved because we were told by the agencies that there is no official ban, but please consider it a ban.
Okay,
Very politely, they said, please consider it a ban.
I see.
And we can't go to court against the agencies, obviously.
Of course.
We have not, it was published in 2019, just before COVID. And the first edition had almost sold out. So they got hold of the last 200 or so copies when we were already planning the second edition. And the first edition sold in like 3 months.
Wow.
So there is a huge demand for it still.
So,
and I keep thinking whether I should try
again,
publishing it again.
yeah,
Maybe,
because it
under
was,
a different name, maybe
yeah,
tone it down a little.
well, it
But
was
how do
published
you
in
tone down
English.
something?
Yeah, it was published
Yeah,
in English and it sold really well in Pakistan, and there were book launches in Pakistan and the Karachi.
exactly.
So
It had been selling for 11 years in
11
Pakistan.
years. And
It was translated into multiple languages of the world. There was never any ban on the English novel. But
exactly.
when it came out in Urdu, it became more of a thorn
Yes.
in and because of that, I think the English novel has also, the sale of the English novel has also suffered in Pakistan, because now booksellers are a little scared of
So,
selling the English version also.
So let me just juxtaposition this a little bit. What is it about Yusufi Saab's writing that is so remarkable? Doesn't he write also a satire?
Yes, he's a satirist,
Uh-huh.
and well, it's the language he uses,
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of that language, the way he plays on words, and of course the subject matter.
Mm.
I think his last novel, Avegum, I consider it is satire, but it's a very sad novel.
It's satire on what?
How it uh, um, it's satire on our history, on our past, on how how partition happened, how it's it is very poignant. It's
Mm.
very his work is just he's a remarkable satirist. He's
Mm.
not just
Mm.
we've had. I mean, we've published Ibn Insha also, another wonderful writer, satirist. That was in my father's time. And Insha ji passed away before my father.
Mm.
And when he passed away,
Mm.
his brother claimed that, his brother used to publish a digest or something at that time.
Mm.
And his brother said that, now I'm there and I'm going to publish his books.
Mm.
So my father just handed everything over to him.
Mm. But
And yeah, so that was another wonderful
they were not
satirist work.
confiscated or banned.
No, they were not. They were not.
So
But
what was
that's not so much political satire. This is political satire, and it's. I mean, it is. They were political satire, but not hitting at period so close to us, or
mm-hmm.
a period that is so close. And not hitting directly at the powers that be. It was not. This book is all about it's black humor. It's all about Ziaul Haq and his period, and all about it is the whole story of the mangoes that was in his aircraft, that exploded, which we of course don't know whether it's happened that way or not, but it revolves around that, and it revolves around a personality who actually existed,
Mm-hmm.
and and Hanif has not changed the name of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it is a hard-hitting novel.
Mm-hmm.
Very black humor, very,
Yeah.
satire, but unfortunately, we're not so thick-skinned.
No, no, no. Um, well, and what's on the? So you're saying that you've got the Korean novel that's in the works that's going to be translated in
Right,
Urdu that won the 2016 Booker Prize. That's really
right.
exciting. And
And Maniza, we have actually taken copyright for its publication from Han Kang and her agents.
wonderful.
So yeah, so it's actually a lot of translations are being published in Pakistan,
Mhm.
and but obviously because the print runs are so small and it's very difficult to take copyrights and pay for copyrights, so most publishers don't go that route.
Mm.
Very few do, and I have published translations done by Umar Mehman Saab,
Mhm.
and not not they haven't been as such. I asked Mehman Saab, do you have the copyright? And he would say, we are doing a favor to the writer by getting the book into Urdu, because it's such a small print run. How do we pay for it? But here we approached the publisher and the author, and they understood our point. They were very sensitive to the fact that it's a very small market, so they charged us a nominal sum, and that's how that deal came across.
That's wonderful. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And Hoori, just as we're wrapping up now, I really want to thank you for everything you do. And thank you for all the years that you've really devoted because you yourself are immersed in it and you love that so much, to music, to dance, to progressive writing, to drama, to theater. And you've been, really the definition, I think, in many ways of how one can be an activist and continue a struggle towards making society just and fair and good. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Maniza. I'm so thankful for you and other people like you who've been a huge support. My authors, you being one of them, trusting me with your English novel and your wonderful novel. And, and I'm really, really grateful for all the support that I've had over the years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast.
Thank you. Hoori Noorani, publisher, dancer, progressive thinker. Thank you.
Thank you.